In the quiet fields of America's heartland, a silent war is raging. But it isn't nature or market forces threatening to destroy the U.S. agriculture industry. It's a calculated assault from unexpected enemies. China's relentless economic pressure has crippled American farmers for years. But now a trusted ally, Canada, has joined the attack. Retaliatory tariffs, furious boycotts, and collapsing markets have pushed rural America to the brink. And Donald Trump is scrambling to stop the bleeding. How did America's farmers become pawns in a global showdown? Let's find out. The unexpected betrayal. Canada joins the attack. When Trump launched his trade wars, few predicted that Canada, America's closest neighbor and ally, would strike back so brutally. But on March 4, 2025, Ottawa stunned Washington by announcing devastating tariffs, 25% on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of U.S. agricultural goods. Beef, pork, orange juice, once staples of cross-border trade, were now weapons in a brewing economic war. And it wasn't stopping there. Plans were quickly unveiled to expand the tariffs to a staggering 155 billion Canadian dollars, a gut punch aimed squarely at the American heartland. The betrayal rocked Trump's inner circle. Canada had always been a reliable buyer, a steady friend. But years of antagonism, policy missteps, and diplomatic slights had pushed Ottawa to retaliate. Canadian consumers, furious and nationalistic, launched boycotts of U.S. products. Supermarkets stripped American goods from shelves. Liquor stores in provinces like Nova Scotia banned U.S. imports altogether. Suddenly, farmers and ranchers from Iowa to Florida found their largest and most accessible market evaporating overnight. The message was unmistakable. America's agricultural empire was no longer untouchable. And Trump, caught flat-footed, realized the crisis was bigger than he ever imagined. Tariff terror. America's farmers under siege. The impact of Canada's tariffs was immediate and catastrophic. In rural states where agriculture forms the backbone of the economy, beef and pork exports plunged. Florida's once booming orange juice industry faced annihilation as costs soared and Canadian buyers evaporated. Every major agricultural export, soybeans, grains, produce, was now weighed down by new taxes and an increasingly hostile market. The statistics were chilling. Agriculture employs 1.3 million Americans, and in places like Sargent County, North Dakota, over 60% of jobs were tied to industries now under siege. Silos filled with unsellable soybeans. Meatpacking plants slashed shifts. Family farms buckled under debts they had no hope of paying back. Trump's administration scrambled to pump emergency funds into the agricultural sector, offering billions in bailouts. But the anger simmering across the Midwest couldn't be bought off so easily. Farmers who had once chanted, "Make America Great Again" at rallies now cursed the name they had once cheered. For Trump, the walls were closing in, and for America's farmers, the nightmare was just beginning. The heartland crumbles. Rural America faces extinction. The devastation wasn't just economic, it was existential. Entire towns dependent on agriculture began to wither. Storefronts closed, schools lost funding, hospitals already stretched thin, shuttered critical services. The fabric of rural America, once stitched together by generations of family farming, began to unravel at terrifying speed. Local banks burdened by unpaid loans collapsed under the weight of widespread default. The collapse wasn't isolated. It spread like a virus from state to state. From North Dakota's soybean fields to the citrus groves of Florida, a grim truth became undeniable. This was an extinction event for rural America. Trump held rallies promising redemption and roaring that America's farmers will come back stronger. But the desperation in the crowds told a different story. They didn't need promises, they needed a miracle. And with enemies tightening the noose abroad and chaos spreading at home, it was clear. Miracles were in very short supply. Trump's desperation play, too little, too late. Cornered and humiliated, Trump launched a flurry of last-ditch maneuvers. He threatened new tariffs against Canadian steel, blasted Ottawa on social media, and demanded emergency trade talks. Behind closed doors, White House aides floated reckless ideas, massive subsidies, trade bans, even seizing farmland tied to foreign investors. Desperation gripped the administration. But nothing worked. Canada, emboldened by strong public support, refused to back down. Beijing, watching gleefully from the sidelines, doubled its efforts to isolate American farmers globally. Even traditional U.S. allies hesitated to intervene. Wary of being dragged into another chaotic Trump brawl, Trump unveiled bailout after bailout, totaling tens of billions. He flew into devastated states, holding fiery rallies and blaming foreign betrayal. But it rang hollow. Farmers weren't fooled. They saw the empty silos, the crumbling farms, the unpaid bills. No amount of bombast could erase the reality that their livelihoods had been sacrificed in a war they didn't start, and that Trump couldn't finish. In the heartland, a grim realization took hold. They were on their own. China's silent conquest, how Beijing tightened the noose. As America scrambled, China moved with surgical precision. They inked massive agricultural deals with Brazil, Argentina, and African nations, securing soybeans, beef, and grains once sourced from U.S. farms. Beijing's state media mocked America's plight, showcasing images of abandoned Midwestern fields next to bustling Chinese ports. But the real dagger was hidden. China's silent investments in U.S. farmland, purchased over decades, meant they now had stakes in critical American food production. Through front companies and corporate shells, Chinese interests owned not just land, but processing plants, storage facilities, and shipping hubs. They didn't need to invade. They already controlled the vital arteries of America's food supply chain. And every new tariff, every lost deal, made America's agricultural economy weaker and China's position stronger. For decades, America fed the world. Now China was poised to take its place, and few in Washington seemed ready or willing to stop it. The end of an empire. Can U.S. agriculture survive? The unthinkable was happening. The mighty engine that had fueled America's rise, its vast, fertile heartland, was breaking down. And not just temporarily, permanently. Economists warned that if the collapse continued, it would take generations to rebuild U.S. agricultural dominance. If it could be rebuilt at all, small farms were vanishing, bought up by foreign investors, or shuttered forever. The U.S. government issued desperate trade packages, tried to forge new partnerships, but none could replace the loss of the Canadian market or the global pivot toward China. In the corridors of power, a dark question loomed. Had America ceded its agricultural future for good? For Trump, the reckoning was personal. For America's farmers, it was existential. And for the world, it was the start of a new order, one where America no longer fed the planet, but struggled just to feed itself. The battleground has shifted, and America's farmers are fighting for survival on a collapsing front. Betrayed by allies, outmaneuvered by enemies, and abandoned by promises, the agricultural empire is crumbling fast. If you want to keep uncovering the raw, brutal truths behind these seismic shifts, hit that subscribe button and stay in the fight.